Okay, when we originally took this apart, if you saw my other video, you know that the motor was sitting in here. I've gotten a replacement motor, which spins freely right now, which I'm very happy with. The other one was just rusted to death. You'll notice that these are extended in comparison to last time. Now, the reason they're extended was so I could get to underneath here. Now I'm going to flip this over. There's basically two different things going on here. You can see that there's a plate over this, and in the back here there's a screw, okay? That screw allows me to turn this up and down. So if I put the screw in there, I can manually turn it. It's a lot of revolutions. If you look at it on the other side here, okay, and I'm hoping this comes through on video, which it may not. Actually, I'm gonna turn this to the other side. Okay, a little bit easier to see from this side. You can see basically that there is an armature that goes inside of here. This functionality, this thing goes in there and slides up and down and actually goes this way. You'll notice that mine looks a little bit weird, and I'll explain that in a second. In order to get these up and down, obviously it's spring loaded. Okay, you can see that it's spring loaded here. All right, and it goes up and down. So it's power assisted. One oddball thing I noticed is none of the joints are greased. And if you listen, the thing's quite noisy. So in getting this to run, what I did was, as I explained before, inside of here is basically an old speedometer cable, like from your old bike when you were a kid. There was a speedometer cable, and if you ever took that out, which most of us did, if you're watching this video, it's this basically this braided wire that's been washed into a square, okay? It's kind of hard to see on here, but it's just speedometer cable. Now, what they also did was they put this little fuzzy stuff around it because it goes through this, which then goes in here, okay? And then this comes on the inside. That, in turn, goes into this little socket right here, and it turns. And as you can see, as I turn this, it turns it. Now, it needs to take a couple of thousand revolutions to make this thing go up and down. So I decided not to be slow. So I just basically put it in my drill and did it and turned it. Now, I was very careful not to extend it all the way because this stuff is only plastic. So, did the other side, everything went up perfect, went all the way up, no problems. Did this side, and it got to about here, and then it just wouldn't go any further. And I was like, that's kind of odd. Why does this side go and that side not go? So I moved everything around, and I put it up as far as I could possibly put it, where I felt comfortable before something would go wrong. And I took this cover off. You can see there's a whole bunch of clips on it. You have to very, very carefully remove these because these are German ultra thin, ultra breakable plastic. And what you can do is you can take these off and it will give you access to this area, okay? And this slides in here. And if I take this arm out, okay, this goes in a very specific way. One of these is larger than the other. There we go. Okay. This slides in there and then turns and goes in place. It slides down in there. Now you see that I can't turn this. I'm gonna have to play around with this a little bit to get it in the way I want it. But you get the idea. Now, let me talk about what's going on here. So, me putting this all the way up, it seemed like it stopped at a certain point. So I opened this up and I recognized that first off, this piece was broken, but still held in place, okay? This piece right here. You can see there's a crack in it. That crack is actually filled in with a 2-part epoxy, PC7. It's actually made here in my hometown when I was in Boy Scouts with the guy that with the son of the kid that invented it. But I basically took a brad nail. Since there's a hole here, I drilled this out, drilled it all the way down to the bottom, took a brad nail that's the smaller size, mixed up some of this two-part epoxy, which has like a 10,000 PSI tensile strength, and jammed it in there, okay? And went all the way down to the bottom and then made sure I pulled it back a little bit so it didn't get stuck in the threads. So as you can see, this still turns because that's important. That's what needs to go up and down. In addition to that, there was a crack that went across the back here, okay? This part here was cracked off. So what would happen is it would pull up to a certain point, okay? It would pull up to a certain point and then it would leave a piece of this behind and the rest of it would go the rest of the way, which wouldn't allow it to actually go up all the way. So I had to rebuild this a little bit. And what I did was I took another brad nail and I bent it because I made a mechanical lock behind here. And then I used the epoxy because the spacing behind here is enough that I could use the epoxy to build up some structure and keep this in place because I can only put so much in there. Otherwise it would have gotten into the threads. So if your one side goes up or they don't go up all the way, that may be because this plastic piece is broken. If I had another one and a little bit more time, I would actually probably take this off, figure out how to take this off because this is all one piece, all right? And you can see it's soldered in here. Take this apart, take this piece out, take this piece off, and actually cast a whole new one out of some type of plastic. Now, I didn't have the opportunity to do that, plus I could not get this off. This doesn't come off on the top. You have to take it out from the top here, and I did try, but it does not want to come out, and I don't want to break this. So I'm just going to have to deal with what I got. So I'm going to go through putting this back in. To put everything back together, I am actually using Sil Glide as my lubricant. Okay. It is weatherproof, doesn't freeze, doesn't melt. It basically keeps its shape. It's synthetic silicone lubricant. So I've been using that as my lubricant for everything on here. Now I'm going to grease this again once I get it in there. Give me a second, I need 2 hands. I'll be right back. Okay. To make this go in, I actually, because I'm almost there, I have to turn this up and down manually. Okay. There's 2 little support pieces that go on here and they go in a very specific way where they have to have the 2 little tabs at the bottom because the 2 little tabs go in below there. So what I'm going to do is I screwed this up and now I'm going to put it back down. And it goes through this hole right here. So I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Give me a second. I'll be right back. Okay, after turning it a few times, you can see that it slides in. I was wrong. The tabs go up because the piece that I want to put back in here goes down. You'll notice that there's a little white piece. It's keyed, so you got to make sure it's keyed correctly. I did grease that before I put it back together. Now, it's not quite in the right spot, and I can tell that because this is sitting a little bit proud, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put it down. To do that, I take the screw gun, I put that through the hole, and I take it down all the way. Now I'm going to take this back out because, if it'll come out, because I'm not ready to put that part back together yet. But as you can see, everything's back together here. Okay? Now, one thing I also need to do is I need to grease this. So I'm going to do that now. I'm also going to grease both the slides on either side because I want this nice and slick. I'm going to put some in the gearbox here and around the gearbox because I thought originally this was all sealed, but that is not the case. Right where this swing arm comes in, right here on this angle, you can see it right there. The stuff that comes down, when I took this apart, there was all kinds of leaves and dirt and debris and all kinds of crap in there, and I don't want that in there. So that unfortunately needs to go. But now that I got this back together, and you can see when I put this back in, all right, this is gonna go back in place here. And it's gonna take me a little bit because I do have it a little bit proud. I'm hoping that this doesn't crush it. But I think it's going to. I'll be back. Okay, sorry about that. I had to shave off a little bit of the epoxy on the background there. But got my plate in on the back, got everything in place, and I'm gonna crank this up. As you can see, it works, which makes me very happy. Now that's in place, I'm gonna grease all of these individual fittings with a little bit of Sil Glide just to get in there. And then we're gonna go through the rest of the process of putting it back together. Now, I want this to be all the way down because that's technically the only reference point I have. So I'll be back so you don't have to hear the drill. Okay, so the unit is all the way back down. I'm gonna turn this a little bit so we can see this just a little differently. There we go. The reason I wanted it all the way down is because that's the only reference point I have. There's a stopper on each one of these sides that tells me that it's all the way down, which is good. I will put it back up later to put everything in place, but for right now, this is where I need it to be. I did move this piece over, and as I stated in the last video, if you look at this, you can see where everything is fine, but then right here, you can see where it actually got boogered up, and that's where the water came from. That's what I originally thought. That may not be the case. The water could have actually come in through these, up through the tubes, and into here. There is a water line inside of here, so you can see that this legitimately was full of water. Just to point, I did also grease the end of these and grease the inputs on either end. So as you can see, this slides in there. This is gonna go through here and slide into here. Now I have to match this up to make sure that it's in the right spot. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side, taking this out of the drill. So this one, originally I was thinking of greasing these, but they have this foam, this like, almost like carpet material on the inside of it. So, I mean, I ended up not going that direction because I didn't want there to be more resistance inside of this tube because these are actually pretty tight, okay? Now, that one is in and that one is in. To get these back in, the way I took it out was to start with one side, go to the other side, and match these up so that they slide back in here as I push this down. Now, these things are somewhat flexible. Like I said, they're just bike cable or speedometer cable is what it is. So I'm gonna have to play around with this a little bit to get it back in there, because this was not in right in the first place. I'll be right back. Now, with both sides in, okay, both sides are in place, I can slide this down. I can also put in the connectors. However, there's one thing I'm going to do. I'm going to add a little bit of this material here, just because the original motor that I took out was rusted solid. The pins looked a little bit degraded. They didn't look horrible, but they looked pretty bad. This is called Gasket. It removes corrosion on contacts, okay? And it also prevents things. Gasket. I don't know who makes it. I don't even know where to get it. I just acquired it at some point. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a dab at each one of these. And I'm also going to put some on the pins. So that way when it goes back together, it basically gets rid of the oxidation and also gets this thing to perform back to where it used to be. So now I need to snap that in there. And you'll notice that with this back in place, everything's set and ready to go. I made a small mistake when I put this back together. There's two rubber bushings, one on either side. The back one here actually has a square rubber indent on it that goes into a matching square piece in the plastic, whereas this side has a round indent and matches to the round side of the plastic. Now that all that's back together, I can actually go and start putting this back together the rest of the way. The only thing I'm going to change is this little piece that didn't work the last time. I have some sealant I'm gonna put on there. So this is ready to go back together. Let me go get the rest of the parts. Okay, about ready to put this back together. And if you look inside of here, you can see this only goes on one way. You can see that V-notch for the one side right here. And you can see the round notch on the other side. So let me go and put this back together. So, round notch, V-notch. And I'm going to turn this around and make sure that my sealant and my things all line up here the way they're supposed to. And snap this all together. Now we have a resealed, self-contained motor. All it needs to do is I need to put the rest of the pieces on it. Since I originally took this apart in the down position, I'm going to put it back together in the down position. Makes my life a little bit easier. First and foremost, I've got this piece, which goes right here. And it just slides on, and there's a pin that goes down on this side, which I do have, but I'm going to put in later. It gives me a spot. You can see how it lays right against this. Next up above that is this piece here that goes underneath the wing. Excuse me. It goes here underneath the wing. So we're going to put that in place. put my sill glide away. This slides right in underneath here. It's very hard to see, but I'm gonna put, you can see where this and that line up. There's some screws that go in there, which I have. Let me go ahead and put those in. I'll be right back. So let me show you what I'm trying to line up here. There's one here, and you can just see it right there, the top of the other one. And what I'm doing is I'm taking this clip, I load it with a screw, and if I can make the recommendation, do the front one first. It's the harder of the two. Now I'm trying to do this while looking through the camera, while also using my camera that's in the way, while trying to get this in there. I figured we'd go through this one together. Okay, and now I take this and I tighten it. I don't know how I'm going to do that with the camera in the way, but let me do my best. Now, I am not tightening these all the way. The reason I am not tightening them all the way is because it's easier for me to tighten this once this is back over at the car and I have the car running. So right now, it's not tight, it's really loose, you can see that. I'm gonna put the one in the back. Okay, just gonna take this and put it down there. And now, also, once again, loose, as you can see. When I put this back in the car, I'm gonna raise it up. I'm gonna extend the spoiler, and I will tighten all these up because they'll be easy to get to. The reason I'm not doing this out at the car and the reason I'm not hooking this up and running it off of a battery is A, I don't want to short out the motor I just bought, and B, right now the car is down because I'm doing a timing chain and I can't hook it back up to the battery until I have everything back together or the car's gonna freak out. So I figured I'd get you guys through one of these on one side, make it a little bit easier to understand. I'm just using a T25. Now, these are technically not Torx bolts, they're Allens, but to give myself a little bit of wiggle room back and forth, I'm using this Milwaukee T25 to get in there and get this tightened up. Just hand tight, not super tight, enough so it won't fall out. And why don't I just wait until it's all done? Because I wanted to make the video tonight. As you can see, there's two sets of screws here. It's these same screws that I used on the lower one on this piece of plastic here. Okay, if I put this in place, you'll notice that it matches up. And if we take a look at this, we can see the screws right through there. Okay, so it's matched up on both sides. All we have to do is put these back in. If they'll go back in. Now, with these in particular, there's nothing that you can do to make them go a little bit easier. Really what I need is another T25, short one, to go in there and tighten that up. So I'll grab that. Let me do the other side and I'll be right back. All right, both of those are tightened up. Now all we need to do is take these and this right here and put it on. This slides in from the back. If you look, do you see how I'm pulling this out? This just kind of falls in place. The back edge of this locks in, and the front, I'm gonna turn this around, has Torx screws on the front, which are, I wanna say T15s. They're T20s. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start these. You'll notice I'm not using hand tools. To take it out, I used hand tools because I was loosening everything. Put it back together. I am not using any hand tools, or excuse me, power tools, not hand tools. Using hand tools to put it back together because power tools with this very brittle German plastic will have a tendency to want to break things. So I'm making this nice and tight, but I'm relying on my hands, not the tool, to understand how tight to make it. And we are almost done. I have one more screw to do, but you get the idea. And that's how you take one apart and put it back together. Thanks, guys. One little secret, let me add to that. Just a standard pocket knife. Those two covers on the bottom. Oh, and there's another thing I forgot, and I have to bring it back up here. Those two covers on the bottom that have all those clips on that hold the gear mechanism together. To get those off without breaking the clips, I did not use a screwdriver or a pry tool or anything like that. I used this. I used this knife to slide in there and just slowly pry it out until it would go pop and push down. I had a little bit of slight pressure. Took a little bit of working to get them to do it without breaking, but it was important. There is one more piece of information I need to give you. On the bottom, you'll notice that I don't have one on this side, but I do have one here, and I'm going to take it off. I'm actually going to use the knife to do it. There's a piece of what looks like a foam rubber gasket. So I did some research about this stuff, and it's not that this is a gasket per se. I mean, it is, but it doesn't come like you think it shows up, okay? What this is actually something from the factory. It's this little rubber that is almost like a two-part foam epoxy stuff. So this seals and puts in a gap so that this plastic piece rests against the trunk lid and doesn't come out, okay? So that this plastic piece here that I was just talking about that I took off with my knife has some support against the lid because I got three screws right here that push this down, 3 screws on the other side. Now, one thing that I noticed is, hey, I can't get this foam. And for the ones that I took out, what I found was they were flat. They were flat and unusable. So as soon as I take this off, let me show you what I mean. Put this piece of rubber down. So you can see this. Do you see how flat that is on this end? See that? And how thick it is on this end? This is from it being squashed. I noticed when I took this thing apart originally and took it out that the seals that were on here were all flat. And these seals are what keep the water out of your, out of the back of your car, out of the trunk or the boot. That's what keeps this thing clean. But you can't buy them. So I made them. I made them out of neoprene rubber. So on each one of these, and I've got to get this off of here, I made a neoprene rubber gasket to go around every one of these, as well as you can see, these to go around these. So let me get one off and I'll put it in place. So as you can see, rubber gasket, sticky back. So I made neoprene rubber gaskets so when this seals back down, since it's waterproof neoprene, the water won't pass through it and it'll keep a good seal and keep the back of my trunk clean. Unfortunately, the glue is so good that it's all sticking together, which I'm okay with. So let me put this one down. Unfortunately, this stuff is not cheap. This material is not cheap to get because it's actual neoprene rubber and not some junk material. It kind of looks like the craft foam that they use to make certain crafts out of. That is not this stuff. I also used 1/8 inch because I have this rubber seal, and that rubber seal has to be the right size. My original thought was to use 1/4 inch, but that didn't work out so well. One more to go, and then I have to do the lower gaskets. Okay, and now one of these. No, 2 of these actually. Let me just pull this one out and put it in place so you guys can get the idea. This actually goes on the other side. But you get the idea how this all works. Pull this one off. And this part here doesn't really seal anything. So if I even wanted to take one of these other rubber things and stick it right here, it's not going to make any difference. All it's going to do is add some pressure, make sure everything's all where it's supposed to be, pushes down correctly. But you can see fresh seals. Now this thing's ready to go back in the car and be all sealed up and ready to go. Thanks for watching.